The night my family told me I was worth less than a promise. I walked out of my childhood home with nothing but my name, and years later, that same name was the only thing standing between them and the house. My name is Elena Carter, and this is the night my family learned that tradition is not stronger than the law. I was born in a house people in our town called the Carter Estate. That name sounded grand, but inside those walls, love was never equal. The house sat on a wide stretch of land with old oak trees, a long gravel road, and a front porch that had seen too many winters. My grandfather built that home with his own hands and his own money. He used to say the land was the heart of the family. He believed it should stay in the family forever. But in our family, forever had a condition. It belonged to the eldest son. That was the rule. Not written in love, not written in fairness, just spoken like scripture by my father and repeated by everyone who wanted to stay comfortable. My older brother, Daniel, was the first son. So from the time he was a boy, everyone looked at him like he was already the owner of the future. And me? I was the girl. The one who was told to help in the kitchen, to keep quiet at family meetings, to be grateful for a room, a meal, and a place at the table. I remember being 10 years old and standing in the hallway while my father handed Daniel the old brass key to the study. I was carrying a stack of books in my arms and I asked, "What about me?" My father didn't even look at me. He said, "Your job is to support your brother. That's how this family survives." I didn't understand then how cruel a sentence could be when it sounded so ordinary. As I grew older, I watched Daniel inherit everything before he had ever earned anything. He got the best bedroom, the best car, the biggest trust in the family. He was praised for breathing, while I was corrected for existing. My mother was softer, but not strong enough to fight the system. She would touch my shoulder sometimes and whisper, "Just keep the peace, Elena. One day you'll understand." But understanding never made injustice easier to swallow. When I was 18, I told my family I wanted to study law. That dinner is burned into my memory. The table was covered in roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and bread that my mother had made from scratch. The room smelled warm and safe, but what came out of my mouth changed everything. "I got accepted," I said, my hands shaking under the table. "I'm leaving in the fall. I want to become a lawyer." Daniel laughed first. Not because it was funny, because he thought I was ridiculous. My father set down his fork. "No daughter of mine is going to run off and play lawyer." I said, "It's not playing. It's my future." He leaned back in his chair like I had embarrassed him in front of the whole world. "Your future is here. This house. This family. Your brother will run the estate someday. You will do what you are told." Something inside me broke open that night. Not loudly, not all at once, just a quiet, final crack. I looked at him and said, "Then I guess I'm not asking anymore." The silence after that was so heavy it felt like the walls had leaned in to listen. My father stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. "If you leave with nothing." I looked at my mother. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Daniel. He was smirking like he had already won. And I said, "Fine." That was the last dinner I ate in that house as their daughter. I left with a suitcase, a scholarship, and no money from my family. No wedding blessing, no inheritance, no goodbye that sounded like love. For the first year, I worked 2 jobs while going to school. I cleaned offices in the morning and studied at night. I slept 4 hours at best. There were days I thought my body would give out before my dream did. But anger can be fuel when it is all you have. I studied law because I wanted to understand power. I wanted to know how the people with the least can still stand up to the people who think they own everything. I wanted to learn the language that could protect people like my younger self. The version of me that sat at that table and was told to be small. I survived college, then law school, then the bar exam. I passed with high marks and got hired by a firm in the city that handled property disputes, estate law, and financial fraud. That job changed my life. I learned how families tear themselves apart over land. I learned how debts can destroy homes. I learned how tax liens work, how foreclosure works, how ownership is not just about emotion or blood, it is about paperwork, deadlines, and the law. Most people think land is lost in a dramatic explosion. It is not. It is lost in silence, in skipped payments, in unopened letters, in ignored notices, in families too proud to act until it is too late. The first time I truly understood that, I thought of my own family. I had not spoken to them in years, not because I hated them at first, but because every call became a wound. My father never apologized. Daniel sent messages only when he needed something. My mother's voicemails were always the same. Your father misses you. Not, we were wrong. Just, come home. But I never went back. I built a career. I rented a small apartment with creaky floors and thin walls. I bought my own furniture one piece at a time. I learned how to stand alone without trembling. And every year, around the holidays, I remembered the house. Not because I missed the pain, because I missed the land itself, the old oak trees, the long road, the quiet morning light that spread across the front porch. The place had once been beautiful before it became a symbol of control. One winter, years after I left, I got a quiet notice through public records. The property taxes on the Carter estate had not been paid in over 2 years. I stared at that paper for a long time. At first, I felt anger, then sadness, then something colder. I began looking deeper. There it was. Unpaid taxes, penalties, more missed deadlines. Then the county had placed the land in a tax lien sale process. My family had not just been irresponsible. They had been careless with the very thing they claimed was sacred. I checked everything carefully, because I knew better than to rely on emotion. The records were public. The notices had been sent. The county had followed procedure. And because the taxes had gone unpaid, the liens were available. I bought them, not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted control over my own life for the first time. And maybe, if I'm honest, I wanted to see what happened when the people who believed they were untouchable finally had to answer to the law they ignored. Still, I did not act right away. I waited. I watched the property records. I watched the notices pile up. I watched my brother make worse and worse decisions. I heard, through distant relatives, that Daniel had been gambling badly, that he had borrowed money from the wrong people, that he had tried to keep it quiet by pretending business was fine. It was not fine. It was rotting from the inside. Then, the week before Christmas, I got the call. Not from Daniel, not from my father, from a real estate agent in the county office. She said, "Miss Carter, are you aware that your family has been attempting to sell the ancestral land?" I closed my eyes. "Illegal sale," she added. "The title situation is complicated, but someone is trying to move quickly. It looks like they're desperate." Desperate. That word stayed with me. I asked for the documents. I reviewed every page. And there it was, my family, trying to sell land they no longer had the right to control, all because Daniel's debts had turned their pride into panic. That night I sat at my kitchen table with the papers spread out in front of me. My apartment was quiet. The city lights blinked outside my window. I kept thinking about my father's voice from years ago. "If you leave with nothing." I almost laughed, because he had been wrong. I had left with everything that mattered. He was the one who had stayed and lost it all. Christmas Eve came cold and sharp. Snow had fallen earlier that day, covering the roads in a clean white layer that made the world look softer than it was. By the time I drove up the old gravel road to the Carter estate, the sky had already gone dark. The house stood ahead of me under the porch light, older than I remembered, but still proud in its shape. Only now I could see the cracks. The front steps were worn. One window had been patched poorly. The driveway had tire marks from cars I did not recognize. I sat in my car for a moment with the engine off. I was not trembling. I was steady. That was the difference between the girl who left and the woman who returned. I carried the envelope inside. When I opened the front door, I heard voices in the dining room. Loud voices. Angry voices. The smell of food was there, but it didn't feel like a holiday. It felt like a funeral for a family that just did not know it yet. Daniel was at the head of the table. My father sat to one side, older now, shoulders bent, face hardened by years of bad choices. My mother looked tired in the way women look when they have spent too long trying to hold broken things together. And beside them sat two men I did not know. One was a lawyer. The other looked like a buyer or broker. One of those polished men who smile while counting your mistakes. No one noticed me at first. Then Daniel looked up. His fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Elena?" he said, like my name was a ghost in his throat. My father turned slowly. My mother put a hand over her chest. For one strange second, no one spoke. The only sound was the clock on the wall and the soft hum of the heater. Then Daniel stood up too quickly and forced a smile. "Well, look who decided to come home." I set the envelope on the table. "I didn't come home," I said. "I came to settle a problem." That made the room go silent again. Daniel glanced at the envelope but didn't touch it. "What is that?" "The end of your little plan," I said. He frowned. "What plan?" I looked at the stranger in the suit. "Are you the one trying to buy this property?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I represent a party interested in acquiring the land. Through legal sale," I said. His eyes widened a little. My father snapped, "Watch your tone!" I turned to him. "My tone is the least of your problems." Then I opened the envelope and pulled out the first document. "Years ago," I said, "this family stopped paying property taxes. The county issued notices. They were ignored. The liens were sold. And I bought them." Daniel stared at me like he had not understood a single word. My mother whispered, "You bought them?" "Yes," I said. "Legally. In my own name." My father laughed once, bitter and disbelieving. "That's impossible." I placed the papers on the table one by one. "It is very possible. The tax lien was valid. The deadlines were missed. I paid the county. I hold the interest. And when the debt was not resolved, I followed the legal process." The broker looked at the documents, then at Daniel. His expression changed from interest to caution. Daniel's face went red. "You had no right." I almost smiled. "No, right? Daniel, you were trying to sell land that was already in danger because you and father let it rot." My father slammed his palm on the table. "This house belongs to this family." I looked him straight in the eye. "No," I said. "It belongs to the law now." That sentence hit the room like a bell. My mother started crying softly. Not loud, just the kind of crying that comes when a person realizes they have spent years standing beside the wrong side of a story. Daniel barked, "You did this out of spite." I shook my head. "No, I did this because I learned how the world works. While you were playing king in a falling house, I was building a life in the real one." He took a step toward me. "You think you can walk back in here after all these years and act like you're better than us?" "No," I said. "I think I can walk in here and act like I finally know my worth." That shut him up. I turned to the lawyer. "You've seen the public record?" He nodded slowly. "And the attempted sale?" "Yes, but the title is not clean. There are unresolved lien claims and notice issues." "Good," I said. "Then you know this sale cannot move forward." The broker exhaled sharply. "We were not told the property was under this kind of legal pressure." "Of course you weren't," I said, "because they were hiding it." Daniel looked around the room like he wanted someone to rescue him. No one did. My father's voice dropped low and dangerous. What do you want? That question felt older than the room itself. What did I want? I wanted justice. I wanted peace. I wanted them to feel, for one single minute, what it felt like to be powerless in a house that was supposed to love you. But I also wanted something cleaner than revenge. I wanted truth. So I said, I want what the law gives me. Nothing more, nothing less. Daniel scoffed. You really think you can throw us out of our own home? I slid the final paper across the table. It's not your home anymore, I said. This is an eviction notice. No one moved. It was like the room forgot how to breathe. My mother stared at the page with shaking hands. Elena, please. I heard the crack in her voice. And for a second, just for a second, I almost felt sorry enough to stop. Almost. But then I remembered every time she stood by while I was diminished. Every time she told me to be quiet. Every time she asked me to sacrifice myself to protect their comfort. I warned you all, I said quietly. Years ago, I told you I was leaving. You said I'd have nothing. But what you really meant was that you were taking everything and calling it tradition. Daniel's jaw tightened. This is insane. No, I said. What's insane is borrowing against the future of a house you didn't protect, then acting shocked when someone else understood the rules better than you did. My father looked older than I had ever seen him. Not weak, just defeated in the way proud men become when they realize pride is not a shield. You would really do this to your own family? He asked. I held his gaze. You did it first. That line landed hard. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. But it was true. And truth, when delivered at the right moment, can cut deeper than shouting. The broker stood up. I think I should leave. The lawyer gathered his papers. I'll need to review this carefully, but from what I see, Miss Carter's claim is valid. Daniel looked like he might explode. Don't just stand there, he snapped at the men. Do something! But there was nothing they could do. The law does not bend because someone is angry. The law does not care if a person screams family when they have already spent years treating family like a possession. The broker left first. The lawyer followed. Now it was only us. The house, the fire in the fireplace, and all the things we had never said. My mother walked toward me slowly. Her eyes were wet. You were always the strongest one, she whispered. I nodded once. I didn't want to be, I said. That broke her. She covered her face and cried. Daniel looked from her to me, and I saw it then. He wasn't just angry, he was terrified, because for the first time in his life, he had no title left to hide behind. My father said nothing. I think he understood more than he wanted to. I placed one hand on the table and looked around that dining room one last time. This house survived because the people in it believed tradition was enough, I said. But tradition without responsibility is just a fancy word for entitlement. You had years to do the right thing. You had years to pay what you owed. You had years to treat people with respect. You chose none of it. I turned toward Daniel. And you especially chose to confuse inheritance with character. He swallowed hard. The room was so quiet that I could hear the wind moving against the windows. Then I said the words I had been carrying in my heart for years. I am not the little girl you left behind. Daniel lowered his eyes. I folded my arms and looked at the eviction notice in his hand. You have until the date listed there, I said. After that, the process continues. My father's voice was rough now. Where are we supposed to go? It was the first real question he had asked me in years. Not a command, not a judgment, just fear. I answered honestly. I don't know, I said. But for once, that is not my problem to solve. That was the moment I felt the weight lift from my chest. Not because they suffered, because I was no longer carrying the burden of their choices. I walked out of the dining room and through the hallway that had once made me feel small. The same hallway where I used to stand outside closed doors. The same stairs I climbed when I was a child, hoping someone would finally notice me. The same front entry that had witnessed me leaving with nothing. This time I was leaving with power. I stepped outside into the cold Christmas Eve air. Snow fell quietly on the porch railings, on the driveway, on the old trees that watched over the land like patient witnesses. I stood there for a moment and breathed in the sharp winter air. Behind me, the house was still there. But the illusion was gone. Years earlier, I had left, with a broken heart and a suitcase. That night, I returned with proof. Proof that law is not emotion. Proof that debt is not erased by pride. Proof that blood does not cancel responsibility. Proof that a woman who is dismissed can become the one person a whole family cannot ignore. I did not save the house. I saved myself. And maybe that is the part my family never understood. They thought I came back to beg. They thought I came back to fight dirty. They thought I came back because I still needed their approval. But I came back because I had become someone they could not control anymore. The oldest lie in my family was that the eldest son deserved everything just because he was born first. That night, I proved something better. Being born first does not make you worthy. Being born male does not make you wise. Being called the heir does not make you honorable. Only choices do that. And their choices had brought them here. As I walked down the driveway, I looked back once at the Carter estate glowing behind the snow. I thought of the little girl I had been, the one who asked, "What about me?" That girl had waited a long time for an answer. Now she had one. Everything they tried to take from me became the very thing that brought me back stronger. And on Christmas Eve, under a sky full of falling snow, I handed my own family the truth they had spent a lifetime refusing to hear. Tradition is not stronger than the law, and the law does not care who your father is. It only cares who followed the rules.